So in this series, we are talking all about Jesus in open and honest ways. And so the Bible talks about Jesus in open and honest ways, and so why can't we? But before we really get into the nitty-gritties of talking about Jesus in open and honest ways. Who knew that would be so hard to say? I don't know why I was trying to say tiki or something like that. Anyways, I want to ask you guys a question. Has any of you ever felt like your life was a little bit chaotic? Or maybe lonely sometimes? Yeah, chaotic, lonely, one of those. Yeah, you agree with me, right? Sometimes our life can be chaotic, right? Have you ever felt like maybe sometimes no one understands or has gone through what we've gone through? Have you ever had a moment like that to where we've kind of felt alone in what we're feeling or what we're going through? Yeah. All right, I'm going to want to put that to the test with a game. So, we all have more in common than we think, right? Maybe that was a little bit silly in the things that it really was, but I think it's so easy for us to let our struggles, our fears, or our feelings of anxiety tell us that we're alone, but we're really not. For the most part, we can understand what each other's going through. Maybe not all of the time, but we could be there for each other. And Jesus can be there for us too and understand what we're going through. And so another thing that we're doing in this series is we are getting really into asking questions about Jesus. And so you guys came to, if you were here last week, I put up a number on the board. I'm going to put that same number up here. Please feel free to text in a question. If you've already texted one in and you want to text in another question that you have about Jesus, please do. Or if you haven't gotten the chance to and you have something that you maybe want answered or you just have a question about Jesus, pull out your phones right now and do that if you really want to. It is totally anonymous. It is an app that I have, and so I don't know who it comes from. And so feel free to ask whatever question about Jesus you have. But you guys had some really, really good questions last week that I wanted to spend a little bit of time this week answering. So before I invite up our really, really incredible guest, I have two questions that I was going to answer myself. The first one was just, does Jesus think the Bucs will win the Super Bowl? You know, I think, what? Oh, yeah. First off, I mean, he might already know who wins the Super Bowl or not. But I would think that Jesus is a little bit more concerned about whether they like each other, whether they're showing love to each other. He probably doesn't care think that he doesn't probably care about the Bucs. I'm just saying. He cares about the people, but not about the game. He might not care about the Super Bowl. And then, why did Jesus think the long hair was the play? I like how you guys asked that. Or was Jesus short or tall? I forgot to put up a picture of what we think, what we see a lot in our modern art and stuff like that. But the brown, blonde hair or like long hair, blue-eyed, white-skinned Jesus that we often see depicted in paintings or pictures and stuff, that is not at all probably what Jesus looked like. He was probably not very attractive looking man. He may have had short hair. He may not have had short hair or long hair. He may have been tall or short. But he probably looked like some Middle Eastern man that was walking around on this earth 2,000 years ago. And so probably the closest that we could get to what Jesus would look like if we look to our Middle Eastern friends. So I am going to invite up our incredible guest, Jacqueline, up on the stage to help answer some more questions. Everybody give it up for Jacqueline! So I have asked Jacqueline here tonight because you guys had really, really, really good questions, and I didn't necessarily know how to answer some of them, and Jacqueline is a guru on questions about Jesus. Yeah. Guru. All right. Jacqueline, I'm going to have you come over here because I don't know if you'll be in frame for that one or not, but here is this.
Can you hear me? I have to hold this?
Yes, I could hold it for you. Okay, I could go like that for you. Okay, so a couple of questions that you guys had that we're going to answer is the first one, Jacqueline, is there any evidence for Jesus other than the Bible? And so it's also kind of asking the question, is Jesus real? Mm-hmm. And so the question was, what evidence do we have other than the Bible about Jesus being real?
Is there any evidence that Megan exists? Written. There we go. Birth certificate, that's good. Others? Driver's license.
You guys are getting real
So those are
government.
all things that were not available. Jesus did not have a hot rod car. Or he didn't have to have a license to ride the donkey. One or the other. Is there evidence outside? But first of all, what evidence do we have that we use for Jesus' reality? The Bible, exactly. And that's what you're asking. Is there anything outside of that? Yes. How do we know that? And how were the books of the Bible picked? Y'all have a lot of years to study this. I'm 74. I started studying the Bible at 12. Figure that one out. So those are questions I ask. And I didn't have Google. And you can't really trust Google. In answer to your question, now you're going to have to hold this. What I found out many, many years ago, I'm going to flip these pages, and each column is a writing outside of the Bible verifying that Jesus existed. Is there other evidence? Yes, there's 249 other writings that did not make the Bible that shows that Jesus existed. Are they all accurate? No. How did we get our Bible? They had to meet 5 criteria to get in there. Did they live at the time of Jesus, or were they directly connected to one of the disciples of Jesus? Because if I tried to remember, tell me, guys, about the day Kennedy was assassinated or the day Martin Luther King was assassinated. Does it mean much to you? How about 9/11? Does it mean much to you? No, but I lived it. I remember where I was. I remember what was on the news. I remembered everything about it and still can. That's why the writings that are in the Bible were people close enough to 9/11 or the death of John F. Kennedy, and that their stories were accurate. Did they all match? If they all matched, they got in it. Were they relevant to the time? Could have that actually happened? Then they got in it. So they narrowed it down to the 27 books of the New Testament to describe that. Now, outside of that accuracy, there's a lot. There's 249. The most accurate was there was a Jewish, Jesus was Jewish, Josephus, who was a writer, and he went to work for Rome because of a lot of reasons, but his historical writings are accurate, and he mentioned Jesus. He mentioned that he was the Messiah. So that kind of, as you go through life, you'll hear these different things. Yes, there's tons of evidence that Jesus existed.
I think we could talk all day long about all of the evidence, but obviously we don't have more time for that. If you ever want to have more of a conversation, I'd be happy for us to set up a meeting with you and we can get more into detail on some of these things. The next question is, was Jesus really born on December 25th?
How many think so?
Ooh.
How many think Jesus was born on December 25th? Okay, there's a couple hands up there. If we think this out, how many people think that Jesus was born in 0? And that the calendar is from there out, that he died in 32 AD or CE? How many people think that? Okay. Jesus was actually born 6 years BC, which we call it before Christ. How do you get born 6 years before you were born? That's a good one, yeah? However, I'm going to take you on about a 3-minute journey. Hang with me. You're not going to remember it, but you're going to know that it happened.
Ready for this?
Ready for this journey?
3 minutes. Someone time it. I'm just kidding.
We're going to start over here. And I'm going to, whoa, I can't read in that. 500 years before Christ, there was a holiday celebrated by people who were not Jewish and obviously not Christian because Christ wasn't here yet, that celebrated a day that we call winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, okay? 500 BC. Let's jump to 45 BC, 500 years. They declared that as being December 25th. Jesus isn't around yet. They're already celebrating December 25th as the shortest day of the year, spiritual connection, all that. Who was celebrating it? Not Jews, people in the rest of the world around the Mediterranean. You with me? Yes? Okay. So now let's jump to that the time Jesus was born, Jews did not even celebrate birthdays.
I didn't know that. That's cool. Sorry, keep on going.
In fact, it was banned from celebrating birthdays. The only people that celebrated birthdays were Roman emperors. So when they wanted to name a birthday, then they were making that person into that highest elevation of royalty. Okay? So that's at the time of Jesus' life while he was living. It wasn't until the 2nd century, 200 years later, that there was a law put out, no, you can't celebrate birthdays. Now we're going to do to a separation. Jesus was born a Jew, lived as a Jew, and other people. The largest area of worship in the temple was for Gentiles. Gentiles means other people that weren't Jews. But they could come to the temple, just not special places, okay? And then when Jesus died, and there was the people of the way that followed Jesus, and they weren't Jewish, they came with all that 500-year history that I just told you about. They were already celebrating birthdays, and especially the December 25th. Suppose that you brought somebody into your family that was from another country that celebrated other holidays that were from their country. What would you do in their home, in your home? Pardon me? Okay, that's a good philosophy. Yes. When they come to you, they need to do like you. If you adopt a child as a family, or you bring somebody in that into kids, I've heard of you. You've taken other kids into your home. Different cultures, different ethnic background. Yeah. Okay. And you kind of look. What's your background? What can we do to make you feel good? How do you fit in? So all of these people that began celebrating Jesus had already had holidays that they celebrated. We call them pagan. Pagan means nothing than other. They're different. It doesn't mean heretic. It doesn't mean that they're bad people. They're just doing something different than you do. Got it? So now we have this whole group of other people celebrating those days for something, and they still wanted to have their party. So they got together and said, we will make it Christmas. We will celebrate that.
I love that.
And a lot of things came into Christianity because Christianity was built by other people.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I'm gonna do some of the shockers.
So I think we need to move on to one last question. Are you able to wrap it up in 30 seconds? Okay.
There were times when we didn't have Christmas. Like 1,400 years, Christmas was banned. It wasn't really celebrated. England stopped it. United States stopped it. They were celebrating it wrong, and it wasn't until the 1800s that it became a real Christian holiday to celebrate Jesus' birth.
Like 200 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And right after that, we, as human beings, decided, well, maybe we shouldn't celebrate Jesus. Maybe we should celebrate shopping. Maybe we should celebrate the night before Christmas was written. And that's where we got off track, and we're trying to get back on track. So a long history of, did Christmas exist? Was Jesus born on the 25th? No. What's our part about it? It's a faith journey.
That's awesome. All right, one last question, super, super quick. Why is God not in human form anymore?
The alternative. If Jesus didn't die, would have he been the guru sitting on a mountain forever? And then when somebody's on a mountain, they knock them down. Jesus took care of everything by dying and resurrecting. That it's not saying he's dead, it's saying he's not in the flesh because he lives in our hearts. If God felt that he needed to be visible and tangible and touching, God could do that. But each phase of God revealing himself says, this is enough. This is enough. Yeah. I would love for him to be here, and nobody would be near him because I'm going to be sucking it all out. So thank you. It's a lot of questions through your life. Invite any time, and I'm sorry I took too much time.
It's hard questions to answer. It's hard questions to answer in a short amount of time, right? These are really great. And some of them, like, I didn't know specifics of those answers. It's okay not to know the answers to them. I feel like there's some things that we know about Jesus that is, we know for a very positive degree, a certain degree, but other stuff is just still a mystery. Like, why did Jesus say that he'll come back, or is it just a saying? I don't really know. He could come back. He couldn't. I'm not sure. It's a mystery. We won't know until maybe one day it happens, or we just keep on living our life to love Jesus and love people the way that Jesus loved people. So I want to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to jump into our story. We're going to try to shorten it a little bit so that way I could give you guys as much time in your small groups as possible. But I want us to take a look at a story about what happens when our life feels uncertain, and maybe we start asking the question, what is Jesus up to in the midst of all of our lives when it's really uncertain? And so we are going to dive into a scripture. And this is a scripture that a lot of us know. It's a very famous scripture. If you don't know it, totally okay. You're going to learn about it tonight. Jesus and his followers find themselves in the middle of a dangerous storm at sea. And so Jesus had the same view everybody else did. He was in the same boat that everyone else, but where all of the other people, everyone around him saw a storm, Jesus was the one to see peace. So let's go ahead and jump into the first part of this story here tonight. Okay, everybody take a deep breath. Everybody hands up. And let it out. One more, deep breath. Let it out. Okay, just make sure you're still with me. All right, let's jump into this. So it says, so they took Jesus in the boat and started out, leaving the crowds behind, although other boats followed. But soon a fierce storm came up. High waves were breaking into the boat and began to fill it with water. And Jesus was sleeping at the back of the boat with his head on a cushion. Very, very cozy, you know. The disciples woke him up, shouting, "Teacher, don't you care that we're going to drown?" Super crazy, dramatic story in the beginning, right? I really like this story a lot. Guys, I can bet you that these disciples were probably really frustrated with Jesus in this moment, right? And maybe even felt a little abandoned by him. I mean, why wouldn't they? The guy who's supposed to be their leader and their teacher is literally sleeping on the job. He had one job and he's not doing it, right? But what I really love about the beginning of this scripture is that the disciples voiced their frustration. They voiced their doubt. They voiced their fear. They didn't keep it in. They literally shook him awake and shouted at Jesus, say, "Don't you care?" Have you guys ever felt like you've wanted to yell that into the universe? To maybe your friend, your parents, a school teacher, maybe even to Jesus, "Don't you care what's going on in my life?" Right? Have you ever wanted peace when things were a little out of control? Have you ever felt like no one could help you, not even Jesus? Or have you ever felt like things are just too much, too complicated, too weird, or too messed up for anything to feel like peace? That's probably what these disciples are feeling in this moment. But the beautiful thing about this scripture is that it doesn't end there because Jesus responds. And so let's go ahead and jump to the second part. So this is the second part here to where Jesus is responding to us. And it says, when Jesus woke up, he rebuked the wind and said to the waves, "Silence, be still." Suddenly the wind stopped and there was a great calm. Everybody like, whoosh, whoosh, great calm. And then he asked them, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" So what we're seeing here is during this boat chaos, Jesus gets up from sleep, probably being very confused as to what's going on because he's dead asleep and they're shaking him awake. There's a storm going on, and he literally calms the wind and the waves with the power of his voice. Absolutely crazy, right? But then Jesus asks a few questions. He says, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" And I think it's really easy for us maybe to read those questions in a condescending tone. Maybe to think that Jesus is yelling at them or reprimanding them or just really mad at them, rolling his eyes. But what if we reframed and imagined him asking that differently? What if we imagine him saying this with really great care and love and compassion for his friends, the people that he's doing life with in these moments? Guys, thank you. Guys, this changes things. When we change the perspective of how Jesus is talking to them, we see that Jesus didn't want his disciples to be swept up in fear. He wanted them to see that from now on, they could have peace anywhere, even in a storm. Friends, he wanted them to see that peace is possible even before things improve. And so I wonder if he was saying, from now on, let me give you peace before you even panic. What would have happened if the disciples had accepted Jesus' peace before they went into that panic mode? What would have happened if their focus was on Jesus and not on the chaos around them? Because friends, we see in this story that the disciples' focus were taking their cues from something other than Jesus. They were panicked by the storm that was going on around them. They had their eyes fixed on other things. But what if, no matter what they felt, they navigated these things with Jesus' peace instead of whatever distracted them? And I had a really cool example of how maybe this plays into our life. But I think I'm going to kind of shift gears a little bit and kind of tell you, if you're anything like me, I think a lot of times in this story, we can get really caught up in being like, well, did this story even happen, right? Was this story even real? Did Jesus really perform that miracle of calming the seas? Did this really happen? Is this conversation really a thing? Honestly, guys, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. But what I can tell you is that in my own life, when my life has felt chaotic, like there's been a storm raging around me and I have been scared. Life when I was your guys' age and I was struggling in school with classes and my homework and juggling everything, when I was struggling with my parents going through a divorce, when I was losing friendships that I thought I would have for a lifetime, when all of that was going around, whenever I got distracted and I fixed my eyes on that and I let my focus be taken away from Jesus, taken away from God's strength, God has always brought me back to that sense of peace and reminded me that I could have peace no matter what when my eyes are fixed on Jesus. I didn't have that peace because I got distracted by all of these awful things that were happening in my life when all I had to do was turn and see that Jesus was right there with me, that I could have that peace in the middle of that moment before anything went away. And so, friends, what I'm trying to tell you and what I encourage you is from now on, let Jesus give you that peace. When life gets chaotic, invite Jesus into that storm. And let me tell you this, trusting that Jesus will give you peace doesn't necessarily change the situations that we're in, but it can change our perspective. When I was going through, my parents were just first splitting up, and I was having a really, really hard time with it. I focused on God. I focused on Jesus. I focused on showing up at the only place that I felt safe, which was right here in this room where you guys are, which was with my youth group family. And I was not okay. You know, if you've ever been through a divorce with your family, or if you've ever had a really bad split with somebody, you know that it's not fun. And everything was crazy and everything was chaotic, but you know what? Focusing on Jesus didn't change the fact that my parents were splitting up. But you know what it did? It did help me be able to walk through that moment. It did help me not fall apart when I was in the middle of chaos and feeling like my world was falling apart, because I had peace in that moment. I could tell you that I don't know how that happens, but I know that when I did focus on Jesus and the love that Jesus gave me and the people that surrounded me, I could feel that peace. It is a miracle that happens and nothing other than the love that God gives us. And so, friends, during your guys' next storm, I don't know if you're in one right now. I don't know if you've been through something really crazy and you're still dealing with the aftermath of it. I want to encourage you to do a couple of things to help Jesus be in your life and giving you that peace. And the first thing I want you to do is I want you to share it with somebody. I really, really relied on my small group leaders and my youth director during that time when my parents were getting divorced. And they were probably some of the only people that helped me get through it. Some of the only people that were able to help give me a sense of calm, to be able to have someone to express how I was feeling and to tell me it was going to be okay. And I encourage you to do that too. Vulnerability can help us remind us that we're not alone. Because remember what I said in the beginning of our fear and anxiety and the toughness of what life brings at us sometimes lets us make us feel like we're not alone. We're not alone. Jesus is there and we're here for each other. The second thing that I want you to do is I want you to spend time with friends. Don't isolate yourself. I wonder if there is a little comfort for the disciples when they realized that they had each other in the boat with them during the storm, that it wasn't just them alone facing it by themselves. If you are going through a difficult circumstance, if you are battling a storm, Jesus can bring you peace through others who see and love and care for you. And then the third thing I really, really encourage you to do, and I know this is cheesy, but it helps, spend time remembering God's words. Spend time in Scripture. Find a piece of Scripture that really speaks to you that you could go back to when you are really struggling. For me, that has always been Isaiah 43. For me, it is when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned, and the flames will not set you ablaze. That scripture reminds me that no matter what hell I walk through, I will not be destroyed by it, that I will be able to go through the other side and walk out through the other side okay because God is with me right there in that moment. And so you could take that scripture and be the scripture that you memorize. That has helped me in so many aspects of my life. Or find a new one. And if you need help, ask a small group leader. Ask one of your friends. I'm sure they know really great scriptures. Ask me. I'm happy to help you find something. But friends, I just encourage you to invite Jesus into your storms and let God be the one to give you that peace, even when the storm is not over yet. Because if we try to wait until that storm is over, we might never make it if we don't have that peace with us.